Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of our Q&A, where we're going to sit around in these orange chairs and answer the questions that you ask. How you doing this evening, Dave?
I'm doing well. It's been a good week so far.
So far, been a good week. It's been hot.
Very. And my oldest son's air conditioner went out, so they moved in for a couple of days while they were trying to get theirs repaired. So they definitely needed relief because it has been warm.
Yeah, it has been one of those summers where, you know, there are times I'm glad I don't live in Florida or Louisiana where it's just like hot and swampy all the time.
All the time. Seriously, that is so
Because
true.
this is getting,
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm walking from my car, even into a building, and my glasses fog up because of the humidity.
Yes, exactly right.
It becomes a problem.
It is. And when it doesn't cool off at night, when like the overnight low is in the low 70s, which makes a really delightful daytime high, it's like, yeah, it's going to be a brutal day tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, you know, we deal with the weather, we deal with things, and we move on.
We do.
But we are glad that you guys are here this evening for us to sit down and answer some of your questions. We got some great questions that came in. I know they've been kind of stockpiling, and this is one that we're getting quite a few questions on.
Interestingly enough, this keeps coming up again and again.
And I think the topic, I think it's going to be a really fascinating topic for people who are watching and people who are listening to kind of jump into, because there are some mysteries and some things in the Bible that is really difficult either to understand or to wrap our minds around.
For sure.
And we'll get some context on that today. So I'm kind of excited to jump in. But before we do, I just want to kind of point us back to if you have questions, if you hear something tonight while we're talking and you want more clarification or whatever, we encourage questions here at Connections. We want you to not be afraid to ask these questions to us. So we provide an opportunity for you. Just go to our website, my3c.org, and you'll find a tab there that says Ask a Question. And you can do that. All of the questions that are submitted through the Ask a Question tab are completely anonymous. It says on there, we don't know who you are. And we do this to allow you to ask the hardest questions that you have and to really be unafraid of any sort of retaliation or backlash because of you questioning either your faith or something the Bible says, something that we said. We want to remove that barrier and give you the opportunity to ask those questions. So please go to my3c.org, ask us questions. But if you need to get a hold of us and you need to contact us and you want a direct response to you, go ahead and click on this QR code that's right here, and that will take you to our Connect card. You can just scan that with your phone right now, and you'll get the digital Connect card, and we'll be reaching back out to you. So, all right, well, let's jump into some of these questions because I have a feeling people are going to be fascinated by it and interested in it, and I want to give us enough time to kind of talk through it. So today, one of the topics that continues to come up and we continue to get questions on, a lot of it comes back to the creation of the world, the early, the book of Genesis, the things that we read in there, the stories throughout the Old Testament, and some characters or some people groups or some descriptions of people that we need some clarification on.
Yeah, okay.
And we're going to be talking about giants tonight.
Giants, love it.
Yeah.
All right.
Along with some other things.
The New York Giants?
Not the New York Giants.
Okay.
Not the or the San Francisco Giants.
Or the San Francisco Giants.
We're going to talk about...
Pick your sport.
Yeah. All right. So let's go back to the book of Genesis and let's look at Noah. The question is, were Noah and his family giants or Nephilim? How do you explain the presence of giants after the flood? I.e. the Anakites,
the Rephaites,
Goliath, who is probably the most famous
giant
of all the giants,
yes,
and his brothers.
Indeed. Okay, so, were Noah and his family giants? Nowhere indicated that they were. I suppose there's a sense in which they could possibly be, and when we try to grapple with this whole idea of the Nephilim, and if you've never heard that term, we'll do our best to explain it. That is literally something that's referred to on two occasions anyway in the scripture.
Can we before we jump into it, can we get some clarification on maybe how or why there's this idea of giants, what that means, what would separate somebody from just being a tall person? Can we get a little bit of clarification? Because I think they're asking a legit question. There's giants afterwards. Like, are they carrying the genetic material? Were they themselves giants? But what does giant? What in the Bible? What does that mean?
And in the Bible, what it means is somebody who's exceptionally tall. I mean, it means the exact same thing. The word giant is not used in the Bible. The King James Version of the Bible, which was translated 400 years ago, and we have much better linguistic understanding of words, ancient words, now than we did then. And they translated the word Nephilim, which is the term that we see there. They translated that word as giants. And so it entered the biblical vocabulary because a word was translated that way, when in reality, that's not what that term means. Although there were reasons why the translators chose this. And it's because what the term was used in association with in other places. Maybe this might be the best way to approach answering your question and getting in the context of what we actually know. The Nephilim are referred to in two places, the book of Numbers, briefly mentioned, but Genesis chapter 6 is where we find them being referred to, and the way they're described is confusing and leads to a host of questions. And the answers to what this could possibly mean will directly address the question you just asked, like what really are giants, and were there actual like physical giants as we think of today. So here's what it says in Genesis, first four verses of chapter 6. It says, when human beings began to increase in number, and obviously Genesis 6, we're way early in human history,
right?
Way early. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. We already have some, time out. I got some questions. But he goes on. It says, then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. Lifespan was kind of capped at this point, or this is what God said will be the case as the future unfolds. Then it says, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days. So their first time the word is used. They were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. So there we have and then in the very next verse, it's human beings were horrible in the way they lived, and God decided to send a flood and wipe them out, except Noah and his descendants. So the reason, were Noah and his family giants? Because there were giants after the flood, so did Noah pass those genes on? All right, so the sons of God marrying the daughters of men and their offspring being called Nephilim. What in the world does that even mean? There are three proposed interpretations of this. The sons of God marrying the daughters of men, producing the Nephilim, which are people of renown who did heroic acts. Notice nowhere in here does giant size, is giant size referred to. It's other places in the Old Testament. Anakites, Rephaites, King Og, who is referred to as the last of the Rephaim or Rephaites, Goliath, who was big. It's other scriptures that, along with the mistranslation done in the King James, that get rise to the fact that these were giants. And they probably were. So I'm not discounting it. It's just that's not what's mentioned here. So where did these offspring come from? First proposed interpretation is that the sons of God referred to fallen angels or demons who had sex with and produced children by human women, and their hybrid offspring were the Nephilim. They were demon, human, hybrid, and that gave them this size and this power that they could do amazing physical feats. The support for this is found in books that aren't part of the Bible. There's a book called the Book of Enoch. It's apocryphal. It's an ancient writing, but not an inspired writing. And it refers to the Nephilim as being the offspring, like demon seed sort of a thing.
When you say ancient writing but not inspired writing, just give a little more context so people can understand the difference.
Yes. So if you take like a book of the Bible, an Old Testament book of the Bible, it's going to give you history. Here's what happened. Because it is inspired by God, it is an accurate recounting of history. So we would look at the history in inspired books and go, this is what really happened. This person really lived. This is what they really said. This is what they really did, whatever. In non-inspired writings, they are also either history or they are myths, stories that are intended to be like extended parables that convey some sort of meaning that human beings should know. But because they're not inspired, there are great questions about the veracity of the history. In fact, there are many things in apocryphal writings, non-inspired writings that aren't included in the Bible, that are purported to be true, that archaeology goes, that's not really what happened. So the reliability of these books is suspect. It doesn't mean nothing in them is true at all. But what it means is you can't count on what it says as being historically accurate, okay? And the book of Enoch falls into that category. And it's the book of Enoch that talks about these Genesis 6 creatures as being demonically spawned, and this is what they did in the world. That's really, there's no biblical support for it. There's actually some real problems with that view. Problem number one is that angelic beings and demons are fallen angels, so they are angelic beings, but they're evil, they're bad. They are sexless in nature. Jesus taught us this in Matthew chapter 22 and verse 30, when he talked about how after the resurrection in the new heaven and new earth, that there isn't going to be marriage or people having marriage with each other, but we will be like the angels, meaning we will not have sexual desire and we will not be sexual beings. So, it's pretty difficult to see how a spiritual unsexed entity can produce seed, because it's not even it's not physical. It's not a sexed being even capable of reproduction. There is no example whatsoever of angelic reproduction in any sense in the scriptures of all, and that produces a real problem. The second real problem with this view is that the phrase sons of God is never used to refer to demonic beings, ever. Sons of God, on one occasion, refers to angels, and that's in the book of Job, first chapter. It also refers to those of us that are redeemed. We are the children of God, the sons and daughters of God. But demonic beings, never. So there are some problems to this proposed interpretation of who the Nephilim are in Genesis chapter 6. The second possible or second interpretation that is proposed is that takes into account that. So it goes, they are demon-possessed human beings that in turn marry and impregnate women, and their offspring, because of the demon possession, are abnormally large and powerful and capable of great physical exploits. Well, it does solve the reproduction issue. Now we're talking about human beings. But the question then is, okay, how does demon possession alter human DNA? And because there are many accounts of demon possession in the Bible, and one could easily extrapolate that in demon possession exists in the world, people that are demon possessed have sex. Why aren't we seeing, this giant race of incredibly powerful human beings in the world today? Or why don't we see it happening in any other time other than these old, ancient, historical events? Because it seems as though there's one point early in biblical history that they don't exist anymore. Basically, after the time of David, you don't see them at all. And again, how can a demon-possessed individual be described as son of God or sons of God? There's some real problems with that. And by me saying there are real problems, it doesn't mean that it's not possible. What it means is it's just not probable. And this is going to be one of those situations where it's like, we're going to interpret this based on what is probably true, not what we know for sure is true. The third interpretation that comes from this is that the sons of God referred to descendants of Seth, who was the child born to Adam and Eve after Cain killed Abel. And Seth is the line, Seth is the one through whom the genealogy of the godly people of faith is traced. So eventually it's from Seth you get Noah, and then from Noah you get Abraham, and that's kind of the if you will the people of faith, their lineage comes through Seth. The daughters of men is then taken to refer to those whose lineage is from Cain, and it would be the people who didn't have faith. So this interpretation says what you've got godly people, godly men in this case, marrying ungodly women, and their offspring were simply, and this comes here, the question that you first asked, because this is early in human history and there was less genetic corruption, people were just naturally bigger, which is why we see giants here, if indeed this is here, because there's not a direct indication, but it's why they are connected with people who are abnormally large and powerful after the flood, because human genetics were just purer then. There wasn't as much genetic corruption, and people were naturally bigger. This is how they would account for the connection between Nephilim and giants, like the Anakim, who were referred to as being very tall and powerful, or Goliath, referred to as a giant, and he was like over 9 feet tall. King Og, referred to as the last of the Rephaim, which we'll talk about in a minute, probably because they're all connected. The problem with this view is that it seems like the Nephilim are a unique kind of human, rather than humans were all just a lot bigger back then. Every view has its problem. So I have to look at it and go, okay, can I be dogmatic based on the evidence found in the Bible? I can't. It's one of those irritating things. Like, I wish I could come down and go, this is the way it is. So what I have to do is go, okay, given the biblical evidence, take it on its face, given the problems that exist with each flow, which one is probably the better answer? And I fall down to view number 3, that it is an intermarrying of the godly line with ungodly people. Because here's contextually, here's something to understand. And I know can be so confusing. In the very next verse, after the Nephilim are referred to in the first 4 verses of Genesis 6, God then goes on to say, and the world got worse and worse, and God had to destroy the world, but he saved a godly line. And it makes sense that this intermarrying of godly people with ungodly people, so that there weren't really godly families being raised up, would be a part of the decay that was taking place in culture, to the place where God says, every intention of the human heart was only evil continually. That is an indictment. It's like things got really bad really quick. And it was so awful, and humans were inflicting such trauma on each other that God was like, we got to start again. Which is what if you think about it, is what really happened in the flood. We're going to start again with people of faith. And yes, things got messed up again afterwards, but not as quickly. And there was much more preservation of godly people. So it makes sense contextually that this is what's going on, that it was godly people intermarrying and not having godly families, leading to decay, helping to speed up the decay of culture. And I think that's the most probable view. It makes sense to me, and understand what I just said. It makes sense to me. That's all the credibility the statement should be given. That earlier in the genetic transmission, that genes were purer, better, people lived longer, people were healthier, and therefore people would have been bigger and stronger. I can see a logical reason for that being the case, that's why there were abnormally, we would call it now, abnormally big and strong people in the world, but they became fewer and fewer in number as time goes by, until finally they weren't there anymore. That's the view that I adopt, but I hold that view usually, and if you hold a different view, that doesn't make you a heretic. It's a hard passage to interpret.
Yeah. And we do have to remember, especially in those first several chapters of Genesis, the world, like you said, was a very different place. Up until Noah, we're told it didn't rain.
Didn't rain.
Right?
That's correct.
They didn't understand. Like, it was just a different place, a different environment.
And that whole concept, it didn't rain. What would happen was, in the morning, there would literally be a very strong dew that watered everything that needed to be watered. There's something called the canopy theory, because when the flood happens, which happens right after the text that we just read, it says the fountains of the earth broke open, but also the fountains of the heavens. And so the theory is that there was like a water canopy enveloping the earth, which, amongst other things, would have cut down on the kind of rays from the sun that today cause things like skin cancer. So it was a healthier environment physically, as well as DNA not being corrupted as much, that could account for, and again, please notice my language, could account for, I can't be dogmatic, for why people were bigger and stronger in those days.
Yeah. Well, as we look at this, you mentioned some other groups of people. I mean, we know of Goliath. We've heard of him. But let's talk. Who were the Rephaites or the Rephaim?
Yes, the Rephaites, who is that the right way to say it? There's actually different ways to say it. The Rephaim, and are they the same as the Nephilim? The term Rephaim means terrible one. By the way, the term Nephilim means fallen one, which would give even more credence to the notion that it was godly people intermarrying with ungodly people and that having godly faith, they were fallen people. Just another stream of thought on that one. But the Rephaim, they mean terrible one. And what we find is that the term does not appear to be used to talk about an ethnicity. In other words, like, you're a Jew, that was an ethnicity. There was a Philistine, that was an ethnicity. The term Rephaim is a descriptor, and it is used to describe people that were unusually large. We would call them a giant. They're abnormally tall, from our understanding, abnormally strong, and therefore abnormally powerful. There are other terms that are used in the Hebrew that also refer to these larger, more powerful people. There is the Anakim, there's the Zuzim, and the Inim. There are actually 4 Hebrew terms that are used, and they're used to refer to people who are abnormally big. So this particular term seems to be a regional term that was used in a particular geographical region to refer to big people or giants. The Anakim, same thing. The Zuzim, the Inim, same thing. And so it's probably best to take this word to simply mean people who are giants. Because Nephilim were also abnormally big and strong, they would fall under the larger umbrella of the Rephaim, the giants. So it's easy to see why the two are put together.
And where do we get this term from? Where contextually in the Bible, where I think a lot of people, when they hear Nephilim, they've heard of the Genesis 6 passage. Mm-hmm. Where would you run into this this subgroup of people?
Yeah, and you're going to find these basically in the conquest passages. So the book of Joshua, the book of Judges is where you'll see these terms come up. There's a valley of Rephaim, but that is distinct from this group of people that are called this. So again, it could be confusing. It's not people from this particular valley. It's people who live in other places, but they're described in the same references like the children of Anak or the Anakim that the Bible describes as being unusually tall and powerful. Og was an unusually large and powerful human being. He's referred to as the last of the Rephaim, which also is an indicator that these abnormally large and powerful people were in decline and eventually passed out of being. So they basically are referred to in the conquest passages. Remember when the spies went into the promised land, into Canaan, and they came back and their report was, dude, you would not believe the size of the grapes and everything else there, but you won't believe the size of the people either, because in their eyes, we're like grasshoppers. What are they saying? Man, the people there are big.
Yep.
They're giant people in the land, is what they were saying. So it appears there as though, and this is the preponderance of the evidence, and the people who study these matters go, it just appears that there were people that by today's standards we would call abnormally big and powerful, that were a part of the human population that lived in this geographic region, and sometimes they're referred to by different names. One of those names is the Rephaim.
Gotcha. I think that's a good distinction, for us to really understand. It's not a people group, right? It's not a culture.
Exactly. It's a name for a person who's really big.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
And you would say that would be a descriptor potentially used for Goliath, his brothers, or was that something?
Yes, that term would totally have applied to them by virtue of the fact of Goliath's size. He was 9.5 years, and all in. I say all like there's a ton of information. There's not. But whenever these people are referred to and they're described in some way, they're large and powerful, and they excelled in battle. Boy, that certainly fits Goliath really well.
Right.
So he would have, and he had 5 brothers that we assume were all also pretty big. So yes, he would fall into the Rephaim category. He was a giant. He was a really large person. I think that sometimes and this is so natural, to get kind of mystical when we read the Bible, rather than go, there are some words that even now we can't be sure on their meaning, but from the evidence we have, it's just talking about really big people. We've got really big people today, right? That are 7, 8 feet tall. But there were more of them that seemed to exist back then, who, by virtue of genetics and the environment, that's just what were produced. And it's more of a natural thing than a mystical thing. There's the non-canonical books really complicate this out. Because you've got the book of Enoch, and you also have a book called the book of Jubilees, it's plural. And they refer to these the demonic seed of human beings that's incredibly powerful, that do all these things to try to wipe out the godly people. And they're mythical stories that are actually intriguing and compelling. But that's the whole point. They're mythical in nature, not historical in nature. And when we take these mystical stories, these myths, and then we try to import that into biblical history, we can get a little, we can glamorize things a little bit and make them more than they really are. And human beings, we love that kind of stuff. Look at the movies that we watch.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It also doesn't help, too, if somebody's coming from a Catholic background, that the apocryphal writings were part of their scriptures.
Were included.
And are still, I guess.
And still. They became included in what they would call the inspired writings around, 1400? They never were considered that way before, and it definitely complicates matters.
Yeah.
When we did our series on the difference between Protestant Christianity and Catholicism, we addressed that issue. So that might be something that people could reference back to in helping understand more the Apocrypha, where it fits in, its development, and understanding it in all those ways.
Yeah, for sure. We archive all of our Q&As. We do this so you guys have access to all of it. And the easiest way to go back and find something would be to go to our YouTube page. Go ahead and click on that, and then there's a playlist with all of our Q&As, and every Q&A has a title and descriptors in it, and you should be able to find what you're looking for. And if you have questions, if you trouble navigating or what, reach out to us, and we'll help you out. we'll help you find what you're looking for.
But reach out with us knowing who you are so that we can
Yes,
actually get back to
through
you
a
with
connect
an answer.
through the connect card, through the connect card. Click on connect with us. All right. Well, we know that those terms are not just the only confusing terms
No,
or
they're
confusing
not.
people or descriptors in the Bible. Let's jump into this last question because there's another term that we want to focus on and understand a little bit more
Okay.
what the meaning is. So, the term watcher is only used 3 times in the Bible, in Daniel 4:13, 17, and 23. The Hebrew word for watcher is different from the word used for angel or Nephilim.
Yeah, okay.
What are these beings and how do they differ from each other?
Okay, another great question. By the way, Nephilim, Rephaim, Watcher, these would be great movie characters, right?
I'm sure
they're
they have been. Yeah.
absolutely. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and read the passages that are referred to in the book of Daniel. And here's what all in chapter 4, 3 different verses where a particular Hebrew word is used. I'm going to read from the NIV, which is the version we usually use. It's the best blend of accuracy with readability, so I really like the NIV a lot, but it is a translation, right? I'm going to read it in NIV. It says in verse 13, "In the visions I saw while lying on my bed," Daniel speaking, "I looked, and there before me was a holy one, a messenger coming down from heaven." Notice the NIV translates this word messenger. Verse 17, "The decision is announced by messengers." This is the word again. "The holy ones declare the verdict so that the living may know that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms of the earth and gives them to anyone he, God, wishes and sets them over the lowliest of people." Verse 23, "Your Majesty," this is Nebuchadnezzar, "Your Majesty saw a holy one, a messenger coming down from heaven and saying, 'Cut down the tree and destroy it.'" It's an interpretation of a dream that this guy had. And it was referring to the fact that he's basically going to be driven insane and live like an animal for 7 years is what it is. The NIV translates this particular Hebrew term as messenger, whereas there are other translations like the New American Standard Bible, the English Standard Version, both good translations of the Bible, that translate it differently, and they translate it with the word watcher. Obviously, this person has been either doing Hebrew studies or reads one of those other versions of the Bible where it says watcher. The term literally means like a sentinel, someone who is awake and alert. So you can see how the idea of a watcher would develop from that. It is clear in the context that whoever these watchers are, they are angelic beings in nature. There's a standard work called the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia that is one of the go-to references for understanding certain terms. And what I find interesting is here's what the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia how it defines watchers as used in these 3 verses. It says, "These are angels who are servants of God, who possess a certain joint authority to speak the decrees of God, and apparently form a heavenly council who listen to God's word and then act as divine messengers to bring these commands and revelations to human beings." So it recognizes they appear to be a distinct category of angel. And this distinct category of angel also is part of a council that meets with God. This may be news to a lot of people because it is kind of obscure. But Psalm 85 and verse 17 says that that God presides over his council of holy ones. So here's what people kind of piece together. There are some angels who are specifically assigned to watching over human beings and their affairs. This special group of watcher angels will convene before God, will give input as to what should be done, and then God will make a decision based on their input, and they will carry out action in the affairs of men, particularly in regards to delivering messages that godly people need to know. Daniel 4:17 in the English Standard Version is translated this way: the sentence is by the decree of the watchers, the decision by the word of the holy ones, to the end that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men and gives it to whoever he chooses. So in this translation of that verse, it's like this was the watcher's decision to be able to go, this is what needs to happen. We know from Psalm 85 and verse 17 that they convene before God, and therefore the assumption is they're not making decisions on their own, but in the presence of God, in accordance with the will of God, and with the assent and approval of God, because that's what angels do. They are his ministers sent out to minister to human beings. So watchers appear to be, let's put it all together. Watchers appear to be a special category of angel who pay special attention to what happens in the affairs of human beings. They meet together before God to give input on what should be done. God then gives them the go-ahead to act or speak in certain ways, and they come back and interact with human beings in accordance with the will of God decided in heaven. That's who watchers are. They're angels. They're not Nephilim, Rephaim, Anakim, any of these giant human beings, however they came into being. They are actually angels, a special kind of angel that is in charge of doing a special kind of task on the planet Earth with human beings.
Now, would this be the same kind of angel or angels that we read about in other passages of the Bible that interact with humans? The shepherds, Mary, other instances where we know there's angelic and human interaction.
Yes. And the answer to that question is, could be. It's like, I wish the Bible was they gave us a little bit more.
But it's not the same Hebrew term?
Not the same Hebrew term. In fact, in the New Testament, the only term you're going to find is the Greek term angelos, which means messenger or angel. The words that we've been talking about here are all Hebrew-only terms. The only differentiation between kinds of spirit beings in the New Testament is found in fallen angels, and that comes from the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, which talks about principalities and powers and dominions, which are actually ranks of demonic angels, fallen angels, who operate over different spheres and have different levels of authority in the demonic world, as they have an effort to deceive and destroy human beings. It is so rational to conclude that, given to the fact that we know there are different kinds of angels, we know there are archangels. There are like particularly powerful, highest ranking angels. We know that there are cherubim and seraphim, which seem to be like worshiping angels and serving angels. We know that there are angels that are that oversee large geographical places on earth. For instance, there was one angel that fought against a dark angel that was over the kingdom of Persia. And this good angel wanted to give a message to Daniel, but the dark angel over Persia, they fought for like 30 days until finally victory was achieved and the message was delivered. There are so many things happening in the unseen world that if you come to Connections this fall, you'll learn about, because we're going to dive into this subject on the unseen world and what it is and how it acts with humans. So to think that there are orders of, as in ranks of angels, and that there are angels given particular tasks to do, watch, guard, deliver messages, totally harmonizes with the views, with the information we have in the Bible. We cannot be dogmatic about it, but it is most probable that there are, because of how different angels, different terms, and different actions are described in the scriptures.
Yeah. But for this specific type of angel that we read in Daniel, is this the only time in the Old Testament that term is used?
Yes, it's it. One chapter, 3 times, only place that it's used.
Okay.
So hence why this question is interesting. And the person is correct. This term is used only 3 times in the Bible, and it's all in this one chapter, in this one place. So all the information we get from them, with the exception of Psalm 85:17, which talks about this council of holy ones, which is also referred to in verse 17 of Daniel, it's you can see how you would make a connection that these watcher angels at least are part of this council that meets, and they have a role in deciding what's going to happen in human affairs, which is not what you usually think of when you think of angels.
No.
And yet there you have it.
Yeah. Well, I love that you brought up the series that we're going to be jumping into, and that's going to come up quicker than we think.
Oh,
right?
man, it's not that far away.
Summer is flying by, but we're going to jump into that. So if you have more questions about angels, demons, the unseen world, the spiritual realm, man, get them ready.
Yes,
get those
get 'em
questions ready, because we are excited to be bringing you this new series. When does that kick off?
It kicks off September, I think, 15th, the middle of December. I think the second Sunday of December.
September. Yeah. Second Sunday of September. Okay.
We won't be talking about demons for Christmas.
That'd be an interesting Christmas topic.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, we would invite you to come and be a part of our fall kickoff series as we tackle on the spiritual realm and all of these things. They're fascinating.
This realm impacts us every single day. And the Bible expects us to be aware of it and to respond to it correctly. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, it really is. Well, and I appreciate what you've said, and you've said it a couple of times tonight too, through some of these things, especially things that maybe there isn't a definitive answer to. You said we just can't be dogmatic in some things, and the encouragement that we have to you guys is, as you're reading the Bible, as we're coming across things, hold tightly to the very foundational truths that God has for you and what we build our faith on. And then as we tackle some of these things where it's a little bit, there might be a little bit of a question behind that we hold it loosely, that we talk about it openly, we give all perspectives, and then we let you make the wisest conclusion.
Absolutely. And some really practical takeaways would be like, there are things going on in the spiritual realm. There are things going on to heaven. There are conversations had and decisions made entirely because God is working on the behalf of those he loves in order to protect them, direct them, prepare them, inform them. That God is working in this unseen realm with us in mind. And so if you ever feel alone and isolated, know that there is an entire spirit world that is on your side and vigilantly is watching over you and working on your behalf.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dave, what kind of, as we wrap this up, point people in the best direction that you can as they're reading through some of these texts that might be a little obscure, confusing, raise some questions, or they might hear something online and want to dig in more.
Yeah.
Point them in the best place that you can point them so they can get some more deeper dive information.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to say that there was a 2-part message delivered by, oh man, am I going to think of his name? He had so much good information. He pastors the Harvest Bible Church in Chicago, Illinois. No, it's Greg Laurie. That's who it is. On angels and demons. He answers so many practical questions that people have. I think it's a great resource. In addition to that, if you want to go to a website called the Bible Hub, BibleHub.com, and you just look at like any verse you want and then hit commentaries. The commentaries that will come up on that website are written by groups of people that are committed to the authority of Scripture and trying to balance Scripture with Scripture. And you can find some really good insight, and you will also find them, for the most part, being really honest about we don't know for sure, but it can help answer some of those difficult questions to get a perspective. So BibleHub.com is a great website to go for commentaries that can help give you insight into some of the questions you have.
Yeah. Good. Well, that'll be very helpful for anybody who is looking to jump in a little bit deeper and find out something more.
Something more.
So,
yep.
Good. All right. Well, we thank you for the questions that you guys have submitted. We so appreciate you guys continuing to tune in and watch and listen to us talk through and wrestle with and tackle the questions that you submit. You can always submit more questions, however many you want. I suppose you can flood it with questions, but go to my3c.org, click on Ask a Question, and from there, there's just one simple box. You just type in your question, hit submit, and that's it. But everything is anonymous. We don't know who it is. So ask away. Ask whatever question you want. But if you do need to get a hold of us, you want us to directly contact you back, please click on Connect and fill out one of our Connect cards, and we'll get back with you that way. Well, Dave, thank you for sitting down and talking this evening. We look forward to the fall series where we can jump into some of this even deeper and unpack a little bit more. But until next time, we want to let you know that here at Connections, we do love you. But more importantly, Jesus loves you, and we'll see you next time.